What the hell did I get myself into starting a business? I got this. I know what I'm doing. But 1 year later, did you really know what you were doing? Well, today I got my buddy Josh Martin, a former NFL linebacker, turned entrepreneur a year ago, and he is the owner of a Smoothie King franchise in Colorado. He has recently celebrated his 1 year entrepreneurial anniversary, and I had the great fortune to meet you, Josh. Well, first of all, thanks for coming back because we talked a while back about just grinding and working through pain, which was a great conversation on the podcast. But thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, André. It's always a pleasure. Happy to recount my previous year of entrepreneurship and kind of my learnings and dealings and all the pain and all the glory.
Yes, and everyone who's listening, entrepreneurship is definitely painful at times, but it does have its bonuses. So, about over a year ago, we first met in Mexico with the OG group, Nick Sonnenberg's optimized group, and you're just starting your entrepreneurial journey there. And man, you're asking some really good questions to start. And then last year, it was kind of all just after a year, your 1 year anniversary, and you were not the same guy anymore. And this is what I wanted to talk about was you learned a lot over that first year and you grew a lot personally, which was very visible to me. And I was really happy to see that. And how you talk about yourself and your business was completely different. So when you started your business, what beliefs did you have about owning a business and your actual abilities to do so?
That was about the extent of my belief. I just believed that I could own a business, right? And didn't necessarily understand all of the different aspects, what would be required of me as a leader, right? How to put together a team, how to run a business, how to market, how to sell, how to manage finances, manage people. I just made one big assumption, and the reality was I believed in myself, right, which I think was the most important thing, and was able to take the steps to learn, to humble myself, and know that I recognize that I didn't know everything. And I didn't go into it thinking I knew everything, but I knew it was going to be a learning experience, and that's kind of how I've been approaching it. So it's you run into a challenge, and you think to yourself, wow, how did we get here? And then the next thought is, how do we get out of here? How do we move past this challenge? And so it's been a really fun journey, moving past challenges and navigating the different obstacles that we faced in growing and building the business.
Do you think? What was one of your biggest obstacles that took you by surprise, or was one of your biggest challenges to overcome once you started the business?
I think the biggest challenge that we've had to overcome, especially in the last year, was kind of a decision that we made to not only own our store, but agree to operate two additional stores. So for us, we saw it as an opportunity. Every challenge is an opportunity. Every obstacle is an opportunity for growth and learning. But through that process, we ended up, making some bad decisions, spending money that we probably shouldn't have spent. Um, we ended up spending resources on stores that really weren't ours, even though we were running them as if they were, with the intention of purchasing them, right? So this isn't
Mm-hmm.
a, hey, we're just going to give someone money to help their stores. The idea was that we were building the value of the stores to eventually purchase. But lo and behold, a year passes in this agreement, and we were unable to come to a purchase price, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is not devastating, but certainly upsetting when you've invested so much time into operating the stores, putting together a team, bringing on new staff, implementing new systems and processes, for all that to kind of just disappear overnight. It was a big bummer for us. But we did learn through that process, multi-unit operations. We did gain an extremely valuable team member and a new manager for our stores down in Denver as we continue to build. And we learned how we would approach acquisitions moving forward. How to evaluate an acquisition within the Smoothie King system, especially, and kind of leverage that experience for a better outcome in the future.
Do you think your football career helped you with this, dealing with these challenges? Like a lot of times I find entrepreneurs, their background really helps dictate how they're going to handle challenges in difficult situations.
Andre, absolutely. losing a couple bucks isn't the same thing as tearing your patellar tendon or dislocating your shoulder, right? So you talk about setbacks, and it's like, all right, I can make that money back eventually. That shoulder will never be the same, right? The pain is a little different when it's physical pain. And there's certainly mental distress, right? When you make bad financial decisions for your business and you learn from them, the idea is that you don't make decisions that take you out of the game indefinitely, right? And so that's kind of the approach that I take. Learn faster than you lose. It's the same skills that I kind of was able to demonstrate through my football career. Learn faster than you lose, right? Don't make the same mistake twice. And the idea is that you don't make too large of a mistake, right? That derails your career or your ultimate goal of continuing to play in the NFL or continuing your journey in entrepreneurship.
Um, is there other challenges? I remember we were talking about accounting. That was one thing you really learned that you did not know. Did you want to elaborate a little bit more on how you figured out that accounting is just accounting knowledge is very key, or bookkeeping and understanding the numbers?
Yeah, so that was part of the challenge in the first year, right? We had a lot of success at the top line, right? Top line growth revenue, we're crushing it. And then you get to the end of the year and you look back on the success of your store, but that doesn't necessarily relate to your personal success, right? Are you able to build wealth off of this business and pay yourself, right? That's kind of what entrepreneurship is all about. And so you get to the end of the year and you think, wow, well, how did this happen? Uh, then you look at your financial statements and you think to yourself, or I thought to myself, I don't know what this means. I should probably know what this means. So I know what happened
Yeah.
in the previous year. So that's kind of what led me to launch a small bookkeeping practice, which is another franchise concept that I got into last year to be able to build that knowledge. And I have built a tremendous amount of knowledge. I mean, even in the past few months and being able to go through my last couple of years of books and the P&L and the balance sheet and uh, basically redo them for myself, right? So I learned what the numbers mean and how to take actionable steps to improve those numbers to increase that bottom line. So really exciting things moving forward. And it's one of those things where it's like, you know what, sure, you can say, yeah, I shoulda, woulda, coulda, but what are you going to do moving forward? And I think that's what's most important, your next step.
Well, I think that's where a lot of times entrepreneurs or people in general, they really they get stuck on that mistake and don't move forward. We made a mistake, who cares? Move on. What did you learn from it? And I think you're right. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, I know I'm guilty on that. It sounded like you were focused just on the revenue number. And then for me, for a while, I was more focused on the expenses and ignoring the revenue. So we all seem to get stuck on one sort of numbers. And what I do recommend to a lot of entrepreneurs is do some bookkeeping when you first start, just so you understand the process, because that makes or breaks you. That's the money thing, and you really learn that. And I really like how you took the initiative to start a franchise, because what I remember in Mexico, you saying a lot of other franchise owner has no clue about this or bookkeeping, and your intent is actually to help a lot of the other franchise owner in the Smoothie King franchises as well as others. Is that correct?
Yeah, so you learn that, hey, this is a challenge for me, and then you realize, hey, this is a challenge a lot of small business owners face, especially small business owners and entrepreneurs that are just getting started,
Yeah.
and they fall for the appeal of being your own boss, and the ability to pay yourself however much you can manage to earn, but without understanding revenue and expenses and top line, bottom line, debit record, credit record, kind of the ins and outs of the language of business, which is accounting. It's difficult to make that a reality. And so that was, you hit the nail on the head. I was focused on revenue. How many smoothies can we sell?
Yeah.
My guiding principle when we first started the business was we can make more money than we can save. So let's make as much money as we can in terms of selling smoothies and acai bowls and all the retail snacks and treats in the store, and then the rest will figure itself out. And so the rest it doesn't figure itself out. It's left for you to figure out, right? And so that's what I've been doing over the past several months. It's like, all right, we got the business is the business, right? In terms of selling smoothies, that's going well and great. How can we figure the rest out? All right, so that's what I've been working to do.
What was another lie or misunderstanding that you discovered throughout your first year as starting a business?
I think one of the assumptions that I made going into the business beyond kind of assuming that revenue is everything. I still believe, revenue is everything at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm really excited. I can't say it's a lie, but I'm excited with the growth that we've had and kind of recognizing and putting the pieces in place to better support our team, right? I've always been a team guy. That's kind of how I made my career in sports. And I knew that team was a valuable asset, is a valuable asset to any company. And I knew that going in. And so it's difficult from a strategy standpoint what you prioritize, right? And I think for us, we needed to prove that we could sell enough smoothies to have a viable business. Um, and then a big piece of that viable business is having the continuity of culture
Mm-hmm.
and being able to cultivate that culture within your team and across your people. So that's something that we've been really doing a deep dive on. And I've honestly been excited with how much potential we found to grow our team, right? All
No
the missing
way.
pieces. And I think from how intentional can we be with the development of our team, right? How much we can help them reach their personal and professional goals, um, and how that aligns with our vision for our greater business. And it's kind of not infinitesimal, but I think it's one of those things where there's a lot of potential as you develop your people, and we're trying to recognizing that and really looking to tap into that through this upcoming year.
The other thing I really noticed was your confidence level over, from the previous year. We talked in Mexico to just this past winter. What was your biggest? Do you think there was one event or two events that really got you to build that confidence as an
I think close.
entrepreneur?
Yeah. I think there's always a little bit of imposter syndrome, right? You go from being a professional athlete, you're trying to get into business to be an entrepreneur. It's not quite the same. Obviously, there are transferable skills, but being able to prove to yourself that you can actually do it and have some success. And so when we finished out kind of the first fraction of the first year that we were open, and we saw kind of what our performance was relative to other stores, uh, it gave me a boost of confidence, right? It's like, hey, we can do this, right? And so I think that's the first piece. And then you have opportunities to explore growth, and you explore that, and you're learning through that process. And I think part of it for me is kind of the power of reflection and being
Mm,
able to recognize where you started and where you are now. Just classic Dan Sullivan, gap versus the gain.
yeah.
And so I think that staying in that mind space has been really, really helpful in my confidence.
Support, like, so you come from the football background, NFL team support. If that's probably one of the biggest team sport that and you're full of teams in the team itself, right? Your offensive line, your defensive line, special teams. In the entrepreneur, like with your business right now in the Smoothie King franchise, how has that being key to your success? And at the same time, is you don't only have a team to run or a team supporting you, I guess. I figured out where I was going with this now. You're not only relying on your team and your store and your company on here, you're also relying on another team that's outside of your store, like the optimized group and your other groups that you're involved with, that's more entrepreneurial than just Smoothie King. How important has that been for you over your first year?
That's kind of been everything, I guess not to rewind to the previous question with confidence. When you're around a bunch of entrepreneurs that are really successful and they're kind of pouring into you and you're absorbing things via osmosis just through random conversations at some of these events and retreats, uh, that's a tremendous advantage, right? The people you surround yourself with and just understanding the frameworks and how they operate, how they think, how they approach challenges in their business, knowing that you can apply those to your business, my
Mm-hmm.
business. Um, I think that's invaluable, right? And that's why I continue to put myself out there and meet new new people who are doing really, really cool things in business and having really positive impacts on the people in their lives and their communities. It's a huge advantage.
And I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurs, when they start, it's an expense. And they don't, I think the majority of the entrepreneurs, one, they either think I can do it all by myself, I don't need the help, or it's an expense, it's money. But I think from my background, if I would have known what I know now, I would have gone into one of those groups as soon as possible, because you're right. We're learning lots from each other. Just because you're not doing the same thing doesn't mean we all have the same problems, just in a different way. And it's very important to have that. Do you have any other insights or observations from your first year, and how are you going to look at to your next 4 years for your, or the next 2, 3 years?
Yeah, I think, what have we talked about so far? We talked about getting our finances in order for the business,
Yeah.
right? Me recognizing that, uh, the power of your team and kind of your network and being able to leverage that. We talked about kind of some of the multi-unit experience that we've had in operating those stores. That was really valuable experience that we gained with multi-unit operations. In the franchise space specifically, scale is everything, right? A store can only do so much volume. You can only fit so many guests in a single store. You can only fit so many team members. You can only fit so much inventory. And so being able to enter into multi-unit operation, which is a huge advantage without having to kind of pay the cash, right? And make the financial investment. We made the human capital and kind of time investment in gaining that experience as we continue to grow and plan to build our next store. Some assumptions that we made and kind of how we need to hire and how we need to structure our leadership team, we debunked, right? For example, in terms of our hiring process, the goal was, hey, let's make the funnel as large as possible, right?
Right.
In terms of attracting talent, and then we'll filter out through a number of assessments and video interviews and um, basically anything you can imagine to assume that we're building the best team. And the reality is, in a people business, when you're hiring entry level team members, right? We only hire entry level team members. We try to develop our team internally. Uh, we assume that you can measure personality and presence and kind
Mm-hmm.
of gravitas through a written assessment, right? What do people self identify as? Um, and that was obviously incorrect. I can see the smirk on your face. That was obviously incorrect. So we really simplified our hiring process. And we're a big believer in asynchronous video interviews, right?
Mm-hmm.
Making the interview process as accessible as possible.
Hmm.
We eliminated all the written tests. It's like, who is this person? How do they present? What's their energy like? It's very difficult to measure energy without being in someone's physical presence. We do our best with video, right, and make assumptions, and then have an in-person interview, right, in store. And
Yeah.
so there's a couple of benefits to that. Is one, through most of the process, the interview process, our candidates are on their own time, right? We don't have to coordinate schedules. They can
Yeah.
do it in the middle of the night, in terms of recording their video interview and taking the kind of simplified, I'll say, questionnaire that we require applicants to complete. And then I think we get a higher completion rate, right? We make it easy for them to kind of make their way through the process. And then the other hand, it takes away less from our management, right? That have to complete the interviews because we know that, hey, if we're investing the time to meet with someone in person, they've checked all the boxes and we're just verifying
Yeah.
at that point. And so that's been a huge lesson learned over the past year. And we're continuing to kind of take that trend, with our people and, apply it to our operation, right? We're big on using all the web forms and all the automations. And I think we got a little too complicated. We were
Right.
so interested in investing in technology. Sometimes a poster with a magnet on the fridge with the vis-a-vis marker gets the job done, right? So there's a lot of low-tech solutions that are really more cost
Viable.
effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're extremely viable. And so we're kind of revisiting kind of low-tech tools that we can use that we kind of neglected because we were so interested in investing and in leveraging new technology.
Yeah. And my smirk was because, yeah, hiring is I think that's the most difficult thing, is trying to find the right people. And like I say, I've never repeated a hiring mistake twice. I always seem to find new ones, but it's
Yeah,
definitely a
that
difficult one. Sorry.
no, that's
Yeah.
that's the case, right? There's you make an assumption, it's wrong. It's like, all right, I won't do that again. And you don't do it again, right? But then you make another assumption based off of that assumption. And it's like, okay, that's not completely right either. And you're just slowly iterating and refining over time. So I'm really excited with the fact that there's no real arrival, right? There's always room for improvement. And so that the journey, I think, is what I'm really beginning to embrace, and all the lumps and bruises that come along with it. Um, and again, for me, this is just all about learning.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I reframed everything. Obviously you want to make some money and live comfortably and be able to support people you care about, and be a contributing member of your society and communities that you're a part of, and be able to give back. Those are all factors, but really embracing the journey that it takes to make those things happen, and learning along the way in every way that I can.
Man, that's one way to summarize this conversation, is no real arrival. Like you said, it's like I call it just constant refinement. That's the successful entrepreneurs are the ones that learn from their mistakes or obstacles, or in like your case too, you saw opportunities with the accounting franchise, and even the other possibility, the other two stores. And how much of that, actually, I wouldn't mind going a little more on that. You saw those opportunities with the other two stores that you said that deal fell through at the end, or did not come to fruition. Um, when you were looking at that, were there any fears or concerns at the beginning? I don't think, my interpretation, you didn't think it would take as much time, but there would be some money involved with it. Was there any hesitation with that to go through that process? Because a lot of times entrepreneurs will hesitate when there's money involved, even though there's a decent opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly money involved. And there was some hesitation on my part, mainly because I knew I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. Um,
Yeah.
but you have to take the risk, right? And the risk, uh, we certainly had a reward, and we learned a bunch through that experience. Obviously, we didn't end up with the stores. That doesn't mean we won't or can't in the future. Um, so it's still on the table. I think for us, it was just a matter of shifting priorities. It's like, all right, this isn't going to work out. We need to
Yeah.
refocus, regroup. What did we learn? Recount, kind of refine, and kind of return kind of to our primary objective, which was building out our portfolio, right? And so if the opportunity presents itself again, we'll revisit it. But for the time being, we knew that we needed to kind of take what we learned and see what we can do to apply it to our existing business, and kind of our personal portfolio. So that's really what it was all about for us, that decision.
Yeah. And there's a couple of things you said in there too, I think was very key. Is one, it helped you realign with your focus, your original focus, or realize that wasn't the right direction. And there's nothing wrong with that. Changing paths or changing goals we got to do that more and more, rather than say, once we committed to that idea, we got to go through it. But the other thing too is, I heard you say this twice now. When you do this the next time, you've just figured out a bunch of shortcuts to speed up the process or reduce the errors. So, if you spent, I don't know, I'm just picking numbers here, it took you 6 months to go through that. Now, a bunch of questions to ask up front to know within a month or two if it's a good direction or not good direction. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like, being a mechanic that's looking to buy a car. You know what to look for as a mechanic. You're going to check the oil, check the tire pressure, radiator, whatever. I'm not a car guy, so obviously listing random parts that I know. But with the the Smoothie King franchise, it's like, all right, maybe it's not a radiator, maybe it's the water heater. What's
Yeah.
the HVAC look like? What's the lifespan of that? Where are they at in that lifespan? How much money would I potentially have to invest if I were to acquire these stores, and things like that, right? So there's a bit of a
Mm-hmm.
checklist that we've been able to develop when we're exploring um, acquisition opportunities, and the financial side is everything too. What is his debt service cost? What's the EBITDA? Like, that was the big thing that I
Yeah.
learned over the past couple of years. What's the EBITDA? Right. And what do I stand to gain bottom line after you pay off your debt, and debt to income ratio, global debt service, all this stuff.
Yeah.
So all those things are tools we have in our toolbox now to be able to evaluate deals and whether or not they're a good fit for
That's
us,
good.
which to me was like a foreign language a year ago. Now they're beginning to make sense.
Well, last year I said or 2 years, I guess it's almost two now. The first time I met you was congratulations on your new entrepreneurial journey. And last year was congratulations on your first year. First year is one of the what do you call those? Statistic of people start being businesses, but your next one is year three. But I know you're going to blow that through the water. And why are you doing that? Because I like your attitude about no real arrival. And you did that by figuring out the finances and understanding them. And new entrepreneurs, you need to understand these numbers, the revenue, the expenses, the EBITDA, the balance sheet, even P&L. That just tells you a lot of good information. And for you, you're also team is a valuable resource, but at the same time, it's very hard to hire. And I think as you had 1 year experience, I've got 17. That's going to be a constant challenge is the hiring, especially as you grow as an entrepreneur and as your store or your company grows. And sometimes not everyone is meant to be on the bus at those different times. So, Josh, in one or two sentences, what would be your ultimate recommendation or advice to someone who's about to start their first year in entrepreneurship?
I think the ultimate recommendation that I would make to someone starting their first year as an entrepreneur uh, is, as much as you want to invest in your business, the most valuable investment that you can make is in yourself, right? Understanding that you may not know everything, but investing in the resources to gain knowledge and experience faster than you would otherwise. Whether it's, sending a mastermind like an optimized group or a strategic coach or
Mm-hmm.
EOS, whatever, reading books from the library, whatever you can do to invest in yourself is going to have an outsized return relative to money that you might be able to invest in your business, because you're going to make better decisions with your business. And so that's kind of what I've learned and have been able to put to practice personally, and have had some success, at least some early success. So the goal is to sustain that success moving forward by continuing to make those investments in myself and my knowledge and my capabilities. And so sometimes it's not always yourself, literally, but being able to recognize that, hey, I don't have this. I need to find someone else that can help me with this is also a way to invest in yourself. So it's not necessarily literal.
Yeah. So you find a who to get that done for you. And I really like what you said there. It's learning is an investment. And I don't think people see that. So I'd never really thought about it till you said it. And I appreciate that point of view. Now, for you, the listeners, we all start our businesses with rose colored glasses. But the important thing is that you learn from the mistakes and take ownership of them. And like Josh has demonstrated today, he's ran into a lot of hurdles, learned from them, and move forward. And there's exponential growth with that. So if you don't learn from your mistakes, you're going to fail a lot quicker. And like he said, Mr. Linebacker Wise Man, there's no real arrival. And that's the key to success as an entrepreneur, in my opinion. So for you, the listener, what things do you deceive yourself in believing when you started your company? Please let me know. Send me an email at andrethimpulsivethinker.com. I would love to hear what you believed and then was proven wrong in your first few years of entrepreneurship, because everyone goes through them, and it's okay that you hit these obstacles, because that's the whole point of it. Fail, try, learn, and move forward. So Josh, thanks again for your wisdom and your time today.
Andre, thanks for having me, man. Always good to see you.
Yeah, same here. And I always like our conversations, and I learned a lot. So thank you, sir. I know the listeners learned a lot as well. And for you, the listeners, thanks again for learning with me. We'll talk to you soon.